وأعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلله فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أما بعد فأعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قال الله تعالى في كتابه الكريم يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون يا أيها الناس اتقوا ربكم الذي خلقكم من نفس واحدة وخلق منها زوجها وبث منهما رجالا كثيرا ونساء واتقوا الله الذي تساءلون به والأرحام إن الله كان عليكم رقيبا يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وقولوا قولا سديدا يصلح لكم أعمالكم ويغفر لكم ذنوبكم ومن يطع الله ورسوله فقد فاز فوزا عظيما رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. Before I always start my khutbah, I always like to pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala open our hearts and our minds to whatever is listened to in today's khutbah. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala first make it easy for me and then inshallah make it easy for everyone present today to understand and then inshallah implement the khutbah into our daily lives. That's the main purpose of the khutbah. It's how we as Muslims can make our lives better 1 week at a time. And then inshallah over the course of the whole year and then throughout our lives, we can become better Muslims and better human beings, inshallah. All praise and thanks is for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the Lord of the worlds, the Master of the Day of Judgment, the most gracious, the most merciful. I bear witness that there is no God worthy of worship except Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone, and that Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam is his last messenger and his slave. May the peace and blessings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala be upon the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, his family, his companions, and all those who follow him until the Day of Judgment. Ameen. Let me just first start off by apologizing. I was about 3 to 4 minutes late. I want to apologize for that. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgive me, inshallah. Everyone here forgive me, inshallah, for that too. My dear respected brothers and sisters, there are different types of diseases in this world. Some diseases are such that affect our body, and then some diseases are such that affect our souls. The diseases that affect our body, we can see the symptoms. For instance, if somebody has a cold, they can see the symptoms with the watery eyes and the coughing and the runny noses. So when we see the symptoms, we go to a doctor and the doctor gives us some medication and it helps us get better, find a cure for that time period that we were feeling, to get us, help us feel better, inshallah. But then there are some diseases of the soul that are hidden, which affect our hearts, and then it spreads to our minds, and then it spreads to our soul, which then later on shapes our character as a human being, and more importantly as a Muslim. These diseases also have symptoms, but since we cannot see them, we sit back and relax and we don't let those symptoms bother us. Suffering from these diseases of the heart are normal, but you have to correct it. We should not be one of those people who are careless and let those faults become habits. So there are two types of things we can do to it. We can either go through the pain of discipline, or we can go through the pain of regret to fix that problem. The pain of discipline. And again, if we know something is not right with us, that we're struggling with our, the disease of the heart and disease of the soul. So we have to go through the pains to fix it. It's a tough road, but once we go through that road, we make ourselves a better human being. Or we can go through the pain of regret. We can leave our lives the way it is and not worry about the disease of the heart that we're suffering from. And later on in life, then we'll see the regret that I wish I would have corrected myself in the past. No one is perfect. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that the best of you are the ones who commit sins, but come back to Allah with the purest of intentions. Remember, my brothers and sisters, this life is nothing but a deceiving enjoyment. Do not let the distractions of this life misguide you and lead you into blundering darkness. The knowledge of the deen can only shed upon light into our hearts. So today, inshallah, we'll talk about one such disease of the heart. We need to go home and take a good look into the mirror and ask ourselves this question: am I suffering from this disease or no? If yes, then we better start looking for a cure. Arrogance is a characteristic which is the quality of Iblis and his partners in this world. Those on whose hearts Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has placed a seal upon. The first one who showed arrogance towards Allah and His creation was the cursed Iblis. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commanded him to prostrate to Adam alayhi salam, and he refused and he was arrogant, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Al-A'raf, وَلَقَدْ خَلَقْنَاكُمْ ثُمَّ صَوَّرْنَاكُمْ ثُمَّ قُلْنَا لِلْمَلَائِكَةِ اسْجُدُوا لِآدَمَ فَسَجَدُوا إِلَّا إِبْلِيسَ لَمْ يَكُنْ مِنَ الصَّاجِدِينَ. And we have certainly created you, O mankind, given you a human form. Then we said to the angels, prostrate to Adam. So they prostrated, except one, Iblis. He was not one of those who prostrated. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala asked him, He says, قَالَ مَا مَنَعَكَ أَلَّا تَسْجُدَ إِذْ أَمَرْتُكَ قَالَ أَنَا خَيْرٌ مِّنْهُ خَلَقْتَنِي مِنَ النَّارِ وَخَلَقْتَهُ مِنْ طِينٍ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala asked him, what prevented you from prostrating when I commanded you? And he said, I am better than him. أَنَا خَيْرٌ مِّنْهُ. You created me from fire and created him from clay. That was the answer of Iblis to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He said, I am better than this. I'm better than this piece of clay that you created. I am fire. I'm more stronger. I'm more powerful than this. So I'm not going to prostrate to this. We as human beings should always remember that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala decided to make us and give us life. In fact, He asked the angels to prostrate to us, and we don't thank Him enough for the blessings that He has given us. We have taken our blessings for granted, as it is our right. Always remember that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one who gives, and only He's the one who can take it away from us. So here we see that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala asked the angels to prostrate to Adam alayhi salam. The question then arises, how did Iblis get into the mix? So scholars have said that before human beings, jinns used to live on this planet. All the blessings that we enjoy today were used by the jinns. But then they started creating chaos and destruction in this world, and fighting amongst themselves, shedding each other's blood. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala decided to create human beings. Iblis was very pious at one time. He was very close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In fact, he was so close that he became friends with the angels. He started doing the same things that the angels were doing. So when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala asked the angels to prostrate to Adam alayhi salam, He also asked Iblis. But here, he backed up and didn't want to obey the commandments of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and he betrayed his friends. Why did he do that? What made him say that he was better than Adam alayhi salam? The one statement, I am better than him, is based on arrogance. Two things that he did characterizes arrogance. First was the disobedience of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His commands. And second, thinking of himself better than others. These traits, when found in human beings, make them the follower of Iblis. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala dislikes the person who is arrogant. So what are the symptoms and the causes of this disease of the heart that we're talking about today? When someone has attained something more than others, usually causes arrogance. For example, knowledge. Some people are more educated than others, so they are arrogant towards the people who don't have the same education. Someone who might have a PhD or a higher education, they might look down upon people who only have a bachelor's degree, thinking, oh, they're not as educated as I am. I am more educated. And this we see in common in our society, especially when people don't value other people's education as much as they are, as like I'm more higher educated than the other person. Especially when it comes to, again, social issues like marriage. When they're looking for marriage for their son or their daughter, and if they have acquired a doctorate degree or something higher, then if a proposal comes for somebody who's not as educated, they look down upon that. Oh, I'm not going to get married to them. They're not as educated as I am. We are basing other people basis on the degree that they hold. And that's a sign of arrogance. Even we see that in the matters of the deen. When someone is more knowledgeable in deen, they sometimes become arrogant. In fact, the knowledge that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us is an amana. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given you the knowledge, and He wants you to pass on that knowledge to others. That's what the knowledge is there for. Sometimes people start to think that if I start teaching other people and they become as knowledgeable as me, then other people might not value me as much. So I'm going to hold on to this knowledge as my own and not pass it on to others. Then sometimes we see that when children become more educated than their parents, and this is the worst. When children become more educated than their parents, they look down upon on their own parents as being less educated. When those parents are the same ones who worked hard day and night to get you educated. They worked hard to get you that education that now is becoming a source of arrogance in our hearts. So we need to think about that. Another characteristic that can cause arrogance is beauty. Some people are more beautiful, or in case of men, more handsome than others. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has blessed them with that beauty. And sometimes that gets to people's head. And they start thinking of others as ugly or inferior. It's the person inside that makes us beautiful. It's not your face which is pretty, or if your face is pretty and your character is ugly, then no one's going to like you. We should try to mold our character that like of the Prophet ﷺ or his companions. We can't even come close, but we can try our very best and learn the character that they have. It was narrated by Abdullah ibn Masud that the Prophet ﷺ said that no one who has an atom's weight of arrogance in their heart will enter paradise. A man said, Ya Rasulullah ﷺ, what if a man likes his clothes and his shoes to look good? He said, Allah is beautiful and loves beauty. Arrogance means rejecting the truth and looking down on people. Money is another source of arrogance in society. And this is the most common form of arrogance that we see in society. When people are blessed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and they become prosperous and they have abundance of wealth, they start to look down upon someone who was not as blessed as them. They should know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will test you with prosperity and hardships. Do not think if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can give us wealth, that He cannot take it away. We should look at the examples right in front of our eyes. The companies that are no longer around, which are huge companies like Enron or Arthur Anderson. Where are they today? So if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can give wealth, He can also take it away. Rome was once a superpower of this world. Who talks about Rome today? Nobody. Even the Muslims ruled Europe for almost 700 years. And look at where are the Muslims today? So we should keep these things in our mind. That if it can happen on that large scale, what are we as human beings? How can a little wealth, a little knowledge can become a source of arrogance for me? This wealth that I'm collecting, which I won't even take with me to in the afterlife. I don't even take a penny with me. And we're letting this money, this wealth become a source of arrogance for our hearts. Think about it. An atom's weight of arrogance will not let you enter paradise. An atom's weight. How much does an atom weigh? Think about that. The only way we can take this arrogance of money out of our heart is by giving abundance of sadaqat. Look at the people who were not as blessed as you were. And then you will realize how much is this, what's the actual value of this money. A very, important story that I always tell when I talk about sadaqat is the story of Aisha radiallahu ta'ala. When one day the Prophet ﷺ asked Aisha to sacrifice a goat and give it a sadaqah. And she said, no problem, Ya Rasulullah, I'll do that. And when he came back that evening, he asked Aisha, Aisha, what did you save? And he said, Rasulullah, I saved a piece of shoulder meat. And he said, no, Ya Aisha, what you gave away is saved. This is just a piece of shoulder meat. Allah. So what you gave away in sadaqat during your whole life, that's going to be saved for you. That's that money that will help you in the hereafter, in the next life. Piety. This is where shaitan works the hardest. When a person starts to get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he's praying regularly, he's giving sadaqat, he's helping the community, he's being a great Muslim role model. He or she starts to think and they start to look down upon people who don't come to the masjid. And they start to talk about them in their friend circles. So and so, they don't even come to the masjid. Or so and so, they have so much money, they don't even give sadaqat. Why are we being the ones who are backbiting about our own brothers instead of inviting them back to the masjid? Tell them the benefits of them. So instead of being the one who's criticizing others, we should be the one who are inviting other people back to the masjid. Because the most famous hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, that want for your brother what you want for yourself. We want to be closer to Allah, so I want my brother to be closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as well. Don't you want to hold his hand and walk into Jannah together? I sure do. I want to hold your hand and walk into Jannah with you. Is that our attitude today? Or our attitude is, hey man, let me get in. I don't know, I don't care about the other person. That's how we've become. Be that attitude in your heart. Have that attitude in your heart. That I want to hold your hand and walk into Jannah with you. That's your attitude. Then we will start to make each other a better person. Power and authority. When in life we are placed in places of power and authority, whether it is in a social organization or at work, we should not let that become a source of arrogance. It's a responsibility that is on us. It's a trust that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has put upon us. How do we treat that trust is upon us. Thinking of ourselves higher than someone, in fact feeling stronger and authoritative, is all mental. Our actions will determine our level of respect among people who will interact at work or any organization. So I talked about this disease and what are the causes of this disease. Let's talk about the cures. Because of course, if there's a disease, there has to be a cure. Bow your heads in salah. This is the number one thing you can do to take the arrogance out of our hearts. We have become so busy in our lives that, astaghfirullah, salah has become secondary. We should protect our salah. The 5 daily prayers. When we take the highest part of our head and put it on the lowest part of the ground. Salah brings humility in our hearts. And ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in sujood to soften our hearts. And soften our hearts towards the fellow human beings and other creations of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Give abundance in sadaqah. Not just putting in sadaqah in the masjid box. Do that too. But look for people in the community who are needy. Look for people in the community who you can visit in their homes and see the things that they are going through. And look at your own homes and then help them out. Maybe they don't like it when you help them out openly. Help them out secretly. When they say that if you give it with one hand, the other hand shouldn't know that you have given it away. Like that. Do it secretly. Don't embarrass them. Don't make it a photo session for everybody else. But do it in a way when you don't embarrass them. But go in their homes and see the way people are living. In this very city, there are people who are needy, where you can go and help them. You will thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on the way back that, Ya Allah, Alhamdulillah for what you have given. And it will soften up your heart. And the last thing that we should always remember as human beings, because arrogance gets into our heart, and it's very easy for arrogance to get into our heart. For a little bit, something that we'll achieve in this world, arrogance will slip into our hearts. Is always remember what we were. What was the origin of us human beings? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, I created you from a single clot of blood. A sperm and an egg. That's what we were. And where we will end up. In the soil. That's why they say we should visit the graveyards often. We don't visit the graveyards. We should visit the graveyards often. So we'll see where we will end up. Once we have a clear picture of that, then we'll see that this world, what we're doing here, it's just a blessing of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for the enjoyment for this worldly life, and we'll leave this behind. And we will not let that arrogance enter our hearts. Doesn't matter for whichever reason it is. I pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us from the people who are thinkers. Make us from the people who are always thinking and asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for forgiveness for whatever sin that we have committed. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala even remove that atom's weight of arrogance from our hearts, inshallah. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us from the people who hold each other's hand and enter into Jannah, inshallah. وَقُولُوا قَوْلِ هَذَا وَاسْتَغْفِرُ اللَّهِ وَلَكُمْ.